Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and we're gonna do a review of Sea of Stars for the Nintendo Switch. Let's do a little bit of an overview and figure out what we're talking about. But first up, let's start out with some spoilers. Huge spoiler alert. I do show off a lot of mid-game to late-game content in this video. I'm kind of tired myself personally of seeing all the reviews with just the beginning content, and frankly, the meat and bones is where this game is best. This game has a lot to get through at first, and the first 5 or 6 hours are kind of boring, but once you get into them, this game is awesome. So, huge spoiler alert, I do show some late to mid-game bosses off, and I do show some late to mid-game dungeons off. I also truly want to expose how big this story is. So, without further ado, let's start out with the gameplay. So the gameplay in this is a turn-based RPG, but it's an indie turn-based RPG with its own twist. And everything is well written and blends together perfectly. The combat in this game is fantastic, and it's not unobtrusive. As you can see here, you can see your enemies before you get to them, and it allows you the choice of whether or not to fight them. The other thing about this game is you have to not be afraid to die, as most of the combat mechanic revolves around you dying a lot at first. Some of the later enemies require you to use items and spells to keep yourself alive to get through it, but early on you learn to become one with death, if you will. The bosses in this game are fantastic as well. As you can see, the artwork here is tremendous. Everything looks great, and all the bosses have a very important piece to tell in the story. They're all something that is basically a linchpin to their area and gives you a very, very powerful goal to set forth in each place you go to. Another cool aspect of gameplay is the world traversal, and the world traversal in this game is awesome, especially considering how big it ends up being. What you see at first is very deceiving and is not the entire world. There's also a lot of puzzle solving as you're watching here. Each dungeon has its own puzzles, and each area has different little things hidden as well. The abilities in which you find in these areas allow you to find more in every area you go to, and a reason to go back. There is some backtracking in this game, but it's not too unobtrusive. This is a fishing minigame that you see here, and it's a reason to collect ingredients to help you build different recipes that help you along your way. So let's get going with the story now. So the story in this game starts out with 2 Solstice Warriors. You're learning to use these eclipses to fight these big bad monsters named Dwellers. You have 2, if you will, seniors, 2 other people that have been in training a lot longer than you that you kind of look up to. The game really does give you this sense of community amongst the group and amongst your elder and everyone in it, because it's almost made up of misfits and people taken from all over the world that have these abilities to fight these Dwellers. Now, the game turns into a whole lot more than that. You go along your way and you meet several other party members. My favorite one, of course, is your main best friend in this, and his name is Garl, if you will. But you also get Sarai here, Sarai, however you say it, I'm not sure. And you get a couple others. The other 2 characters I really don't want to spoil for you because they are pretty integral to the story and they do mean something. You may see them in this video, but I'm not going to explain their backgrounds here. Another really cool aspect of the story here is how well it rolls along with the mechanics of the game. Everything you do in this game really fits well, and the story just keeps moving, boom, 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 boom. Once you get through that first 5 or 6 hours, it just carries along its way, and I absolutely love that. I was really confused at first on the story in this, but it ended up being really good. Give it time and give it a minute, and you may feel those Chrono Trigger vibes. So let's hit controls and audio now. So the controls in this game are pretty fantastic, but they're what you'd expect from a turn-based RPG. That being said, it has its own element to it, being like Super Mario RPG, where if you time your attacks properly, you'll get a double attack, and if you time your defenses properly, you'll get a defensive bonus. This becomes pretty integral to understanding how to play this game, and a lot of the later bosses really require you to use this mechanic properly. You can't just spam your way through it with items or spells and just keep yourself alive. Your magic stays low through the whole game, and it is completely dependent on how you utilize combat. But I want to show some of the audio off here because I really enjoyed this, and this is a bar scene from the middle of the game where every time you go into a bar it plays the battle music, but it has its own tune and its own vibe. So, without further ado, I think we should show that music off. So let's talk a little bit of combat now. And I briefly mentioned a little bit of how this works, but now I'm going to go into more detail. The combat in this game has different weapon types for every character, and they have a different spell type. These are integral to understand because it has locks, if you will, for an enemy to use its magic spells. If you can break these locks through using these combinations of attack and magic, you can essentially stop them in their path from attacking you. Now this is really important on some of the bosses and some of the harder enemies in the game because they can just steamroll you if not. There are also ultimate attacks. As you can see, there's a combo meter on my left there. This combo meter grows through attacks and defenses and other things you do, and it allows you to use these special attacks which can cause a ton of damage. They also cause certain status effects and weaknesses which allow you to do more damage. As you can see here, I'm using another attack which uses a combination of both sun and moon. So there is a ton of different variation to how the combat works in this game, as well as having each character with their own unique differentiation, if you will, of what they have, whether it's a sword and a sun or a hammer-like weapon, with the staff and a moon, for example. There's also a poison and a dark magic and some other things. So the game has a ton of different mechanics to the combat, and it really encourages you to get good at this and understand it. You don't really ever grow a ton of hit points, you never really grow a ton of magic. The game really is very limited from beginning to end. There wasn't just a lot of me power leveling possible. All of the enemies, even later on in the game, still have the ability to do a lot of damage to you, and the game really does want you to focus on the mechanic of battle instead of just going into it. So let's talk graphics and animations now. So the graphics in this game, in my opinion, are absolutely gorgeous. For being an indie game, this is top-notch development and animation. My video truly cannot do it justice, as it does have a much better frame rate and resolution on the Switch itself. I never had any performance issues at all. The game never crashed on me. I never saw any frame rate issues. Everything ran perfectly smooth. I would say that they adapted this extremely well to the Switch, and this is definitely a physical buy. I believe there's a tiny day one update, but it's not really that big, and you can pretty much play the entire thing from cartridge. All of the performance issues that you may have thought existed somewhere else, I don't see them period in this game. The game runs smooth as butter. So kudos to the developers because they really did show a lot of effort in their Switch port here. Now, I know that the graphics may turn a few people off because they are that old school pixel art style, but getting into the game and seeing it on a big screen may change your mind. It really is a beautiful game. So let's talk about conclusion now. So in conclusion, this game turned out to be a must-buy for me. I really enjoyed it, and after sticking through that first 5 or 6 hours, it surprised me. It doesn't really get that Chrono Trigger Chrono Cross vibe till the end, and you really have to see the connection to understand it. But that being said, the story, the artwork, the gameplay, the combat, mechanics, every element and piece of this game is fantastic, and it's of really high quality. The cartridge is still fairly cheap at around $35 or $40, and I highly recommend picking it up as I see this game being very valuable in the future. It is pretty complete and it is 100% playable. So, without further ado, thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27Kane, signing out.